बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम। अस्सलाम वालेकुम। कैपिटल टॉक में खुशामदीद। आज हमारे मेहमान दो एम्बेसडर्स हैं। इन दोनों एम्बेसडर्स का ताल्लुक दो ऐसे ममालिक के साथ है जो आपस में नफ़रत की और जंग की एक तवील हिस्ट्री रखते हैं। इनकी आपस में बहुत जंगें हुई, उनमें हज़ारों लाखों लोग मारे गए, लेकिन फिर आखिरकार इनकी जो दुश्मनी है और नफ़रत है वो दोस्ती में बदल गई और मोहब्बत में बदल गई। और आज इस दुनिया में इन दो ममालिक की जो नफ़रत की कहानी है और जो मोहब्बत की कहानी है उसको एक मिसाल के तौर पर पेश किया जाता है। और कुछ दिन पहले हमारे वज़ीर-ए-आज़म इमरान खान साहब ने करतारपुर राहदारी के इफ्तिताह के मौका पे इन दोनों ममालिक का हवाला दिया, इनकी मिसाल पेश की। क्या कहा वज़ीर-ए-आज़म इमरान खान ने, ज़रा सुनिए।
मैं एक दिन देख रहा हूं कि हम भी जिस तरह फ्रांस और जर्मनी, उन्होंने कितनी जंगें लड़ी, कितने करोड़ लोग एक दूसरे के मरे, लेकिन आज जाके देखें फ्रांस और जर्मनी को, तिजारत करते हैं, बॉर्डर खुले हैं, खुशहाली है, कोई सोच भी नहीं सकता जंग का। इंशाअल्लाह जब ये हमारा मसला हल हो जाएगा कश्मीर का, कश्मीरियों को अपने हकूक मिल जाएंगे, इंशाअल्लाह ये बर्रे सगीर में भी उस तरह की खुशहाली आएगी, उस तरह ये हमारा सारा हमारा खिता उठेगा।
तो वज़ीर-ए-आज़म इमरान खान साहब ने जिन दो ममालिक का जिक्र किया वो थे फ्रांस और जर्मनी, और उन्होंने ये कहा कि जिस तरह इन दो ममालिक की दुश्मनी दोस्ती में बदली, तो एक दिन आएगा जब इस खिते में भी यही मिसाल जो है ये हकीकत बनेगी। तो क्या ये मुमकिन है? क्या फ़्रांस और जर्मनी की जो मिसाल है उसको हम हिंदुस्तान और जो पाकिस्तान में जो कशीदगी है उस पर लागू कर सकते हैं? तो इस पर गुफ्तगू के लिए आज हमारे साथ मौजूद हैं फ़्रांस और जर्मनी के एम्बेसडर्स। उनका तारुफ करवाऊँगा। हमारे साथ मौजूद है मिस्टर मार्क बेरिटी, द ऑनरेबल एम्बेसडर ऑफ फ्रांस इन पाकिस्तान, एंड मिस्टर बर्नहार्ड Schlegich, the Honorable Ambassador of Germany in Pakistan. Thank you very much. First of all, tell us, is it appropriate to compare the past between France and Germany and the current tension between Pakistan and India?
Well, thank you very much, Hamid, for inviting us together to your show, because we are about to celebrate on the 22nd of January the anniversary of the treaties of the Élysée and the first anniversary of the treaties of Aachen, which are really the base for the reconciliation and, further than that, the partnership between France and Germany. So of course it's very flattering to see that His Excellency the Prime Minister Imran Khan has referred, and not only this time but several times, to the relationship between France and Germany. It is of course quite tempting to do this, and I must say that there are a number of things that are comparable, but of course each situation is different. Our enmity with Germany started a very long time ago, and it ended up in 2 world wars and also other conflicts. Reasons for this were numerous, but there was arm race, there was nationalism, there was some sensitivity about geostrategic issues. Here, of course, you have a different context. The conflict is a result, so to say, of partition, unsolved issues of partitions. So we are not pretending that our relationship between France and Germany is an example to be followed, but we hope that in the future it could be an inspiration for the countries in the region.
Honorable Ambassador of Germany, can you tell us about the bad days? How many people were killed in wars between France and Germany?
Well, I don't have the exact numbers for the moment, but for instance, in this First World War, I mean the Great European War, there were millions being killed on all sides. I mean, take an example, the Battle of Verdun, the most atrocious battle in the First World War, killed roughly 160 French and 130 German soldiers. And I have to say, particularly when it comes to Verdun, I'm still absolutely struck by this image of our two presidents at the time, François Mitterrand and Helmut Kohl, standing hand in hand, I mean holding hands in front of the ossuary of Verdun, which gave a really powerful symbol of French-German reconciliation and looking forward into the future. And that was only in the 80s. Yeah. So I think that sent a very powerful message, and it still resonates with people like us.
Excellency, now tell us how this enmity turned into friendship.
Well, I think it was the result of the realization that having wars every 20, 30 years was unsustainable. We started, well, we have to put a limit, 1870, then 1914, and then 1939. We realized that this was impossible to keep this pace and that something had to be done to solve our problems. So there was, at the very outset, a very strong political will, and you show on your documentary two very prominent figures of this normalization process. It's Chancellor Adenauer and General de Gaulle. To be very clear about this, it's not the first time that attempts have been made. Already in the 19th century, there was a German philosopher and thinker, he wrote a book in 1843 about the rapprochement between France and Germany. It's Mr. Rüge, his name was. In France, 1911, there was an intellectual and a minister, Marcel Samba, who wrote a book exactly about the same issue, how we bring France and Germany together to avoid further conflicts. So this is the beginning. But General de Gaulle and Chancellor Adenauer has put this into action. First action is to create people-to-people relationship. So this is the reason why they started twinning cities. 1950 was the first twinning between a French city and a German city. After this, there was the treaties of the Élysée. And these treaties started an intense cooperation in the field of politics, culture, and economy. On the other hand, we started the multilateral track that led to the European Union. So it's the political will that matters, but you have also to go to the grassroots and make sure that people are talking to each other. Exchange programs between the youth have been also very efficient. Now we have French and German young people who go to the other country to study or to stay for a few weeks or months, and this is very positive because it creates understanding between the two populations.
Excellency, please tell us, can we say that Élysée Treaty was actually the base for the creation of European Union?
Yes, I think we can say so. I mean, the German-French reconciliation and European integration are inextricably linked. And I think the German-French reconciliation builds the basis for the setup of the European idea. And frankly, this is, President Macron refers to it as a sort of miracle. It is, because, I mean, you have to see, I mean, Europe is, I would say, at the same time, the most aspirational and most successful attempt to pool national sovereignty and political responsibility, as it is, and no doubt about it, emerging from veritable nightmares. Because, I mean, if you see it even today. I mean, if you travel in Europe, you see all the marks of war and political conflict. I mean, you see it if you travel in France. I mean, you see all these plaques remembering those who have been killed in the First War beside those who have been killed in the Second. I mean, if you walk through German cities, you find these engraved brass cobblestones of people who lived there and at the time, and then had been deported and killed in the Holocaust. You find memorials everywhere. So Thomas Mann, one of the famous German writers, once wrote, I mean, if you travel through Europe, you make a travel through time. And this Europe has been forged from the rubble of this fratricidal wars and eternal struggle. And this is really a great, I would say, a political achievement of particularly personalities, bold leadership by people like Konrad Adenauer and General de Gaulle, but also institutional setup, I mean, underpinning that, and then, and I totally agree with the French ambassador here, these grassroots contacts, that this idea of reconciliation was actually grounded in the broader public, in French and German people.
There was a territorial dispute also between France and Germany. Alsace-Lorraine, how this dispute was resolved?
Well, first the dispute started a long time ago, because it started in the 9th century. So you can imagine it's a long story. It became very acute after the War of 1870, where Alsace-Lorraine shifted to Germany. It was resolved later during the treaties of Versailles, where it shifted back to France, and again under Nazi occupation it was taken. So the resolution of this problem came at the end of World War II, where France recovered sovereignty over Alsace-Lorraine. Alsace is a region that is, of course, the symbol of enmity and of union between France and Germany, symbol of the partition between the two parts of the Carolingian Empire that were to become France and Germany, because it's interesting to see that the first document we have in French and in German is the Oath of Strasbourg, that is precisely in Alsace-Lorraine. So we have recovered this territory. The Alsatians speak a German dialect. So I've been serving in Alsace during my military time, and they speak between them a German dialect. What's interesting is that in Alsace, we have a very close cooperation, trans-border cooperation between France and Germany.
Absolutely.
And this is one of the things that has been even made stronger by the treaties of Aachen that was signed last year. Today, if you have a heart attack in a remote region of Alsace, well, if it's quicker to go to Germany to get a treatment, well, this is what happened. You're taken to Germany. So you see how this bone of contention between our two countries became a symbol of superb trans-border cooperation.
Excellency, can we compare Alsace-Lorraine with the dispute of Jammu and Kashmir?
Well, you see, I'm always a bit cautious to mechanically transfer one historic experience, as we have seen in Alsace-Lorraine, to another setting, because the circumstances, the historic conditions, also the background is always different. The nature of a conflict is different. I think what we can say is that even fratricidal conflicts or essential conflicts between countries can be resolved. And I think by dint of, as we have said, bold leadership, that would be political will to do so, then it has to come from both sides. The parties themselves need to be involved, and they need to be convinced of it. And I think, thirdly, what is very important and what we have seen in the French and German example is, I think what is absolutely necessary is a degree of pragmatism and compromise. I think the willingness to look into the future rather than being obsessed by the past. And that, I agree, it's relatively general what I say, but that applies also to the question of Jammu and Kashmir.
Okay, so can India and Pakistan learn something from France and Germany?
Of course, there's always something to learn about history and about what happens elsewhere. But again, what I think is that you cannot duplicate, you cannot use something as a template. It's an historical experience that you can find inspiration in, to say, yes, it is possible, even when two countries were, as we said, hereditary enemies, because this was the term that was used in France and Germany. You inherit your enemy from the previous generations. So even in this case, when the death toll has been so humongous, well, even in such a situation, yes, even when, I mean, German troops have occupied Paris. I mean, this is something, and the French troops have occupied parts of Germany, in the Saarland, for instance, and even in Berlin. So even this, it is possible under such conditions. So it means it's inspiration rather than example.
Okay, Prime Minister Imran Khan is giving this example again and again, France, Germany, France, Germany. But if a follower and fan of Hitler is ruling India, then what should we do?
You have to talk.
You have to talk.
It's my feeling, and this is what we are. We are diplomats.
Yes.
And so we think that you solve problems by negotiations and diplomacy. It's difficult, and we've seen this elsewhere, because it's always difficult to even create the conditions for the dialogue, but this is the only way. War is not to be the option. It's difficult, but it's the way things should be.
I remember that the American President John F. Kennedy, he played an important role for the agreement which took place on 22nd of January 1963. He facilitated that. Do you think that in current situation in 2020, the American President, Mr. Trump, can also play some important role for bridging gaps between India and Pakistan?
Well, the Americans, I mean, are a world power still. I mean, they call themselves the indispensable nation, and it's true. I mean, they have played a role in Europe after the Second World War II. I mean, they were, I would say, midwifing to some extent the creation of the European Union. They encouraged European countries to come together, not least in view of the emerging geopolitical situation at the time, with a nascent Soviet Union coming up and gaining power. So yes, the Americans played a pivotal role in Europe after the Second World War, and yes, I believe the Americans can play and should play a role in South Asia, and I think they are prepared to do so. Of course, as I said before, a conflict must and should and will predominantly be resolved, be tackled and resolved by the parties themselves. So there must be a kind of willingness to come to the table and to talk. And it's true, it takes two to tango, but political leadership also encompasses that you are not too easily disencouraged by setbacks, that you have, I think, a strategic vision of what you want, and as I said before, I think a sense of pragmatism and compromise is absolutely necessary.
Sir, do you agree with him?
Of course, he's my German colleague, so I agree. But it's exactly what we are saying. You need compromise, you need discussion, you need negotiation, even if it's very complicated.
Okay. So बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग डिस्कशन चल रही है. यहाँ पर हम एक वक्फा लेते हैं और वक्फे के बाद हमारी गुफ्तगू जारी रहेगी.